Hello, folks. It's your friend Bernie here, and it is the Co-working Values podcast. And I'm like uber excited to be in the brand new Urban MBA hub, which is near Old Street in London, if you know that. And we're here to record the podcast about the event we're doing in October called Community is the Key. That's brought to you by our friends at Salto, and that's like an ongoing project and mission to uncover. Everyone talks about community, but no one knows what community is. It's like catching smoke in a jar, is how I like to describe it. And with me is Catherine, who, what are you known for and what would you like to be known for?
Well, thank you for the introduction. And it's just to echo as well, it's really exciting to be in the Urban MBA office. It is brand new and nobody's even here yet. And I can say it is gorgeous. I'm really excited to be here for the event at the end of October. Woohoo!
Yeah,
we're
punching the air there, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. We're full of excitement, full of smiles here today. Who am I? I'm a community and events specialist. So I've been running communities, involved in building them, if I really think back to it, since the start of my career. So since back at university, a pretty long while ago. But yeah, looking back to then when I started my own social enterprise called GLOW, which stands for Growing Leaders with Opportunities and Willpower, where we tried to inspire more young women to go into business. Because a lot of the time when I was looking around, a lot of the examples on the media, a lot of examples that we used at universities, a lot of case studies, you often saw the same names: Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, the amount of VC firms that gave the name of Alan Sugar. And, there are more people that are doing fantastic work that aren't being mentioned. And then when I spoke to a lot of women on my course, but also at schools, I used to be a youth worker before that as a volunteer. And speaking to a lot of them, they're like, oh no, I wouldn't go into business, or I wouldn't start anything, or I don't know what my career would look like, but I wouldn't be a business owner, basically. And I was like, oh, well, why? And they're like, well, it's not for me. I was like, but it is. There are wonderful people doing incredible things. And I went, well, that's not good enough. We need to show young women, bring them all together and give them role models of people who are breaking the barriers and doing amazing things. And so went to the business school at the time and went, this is my idea, this is what I want to do. Thankfully, they were like, yeah, we're totally on board, and gave me full funding to do it. And we created an event which brought about 150 young women together in a room, listening to two panels, one of entrepreneurial women and one of corporate leaders. And they were speaking about their experience and, giving the hard truth, Chatham House rules, we're going to be honest, we're going to be open. And it inspired a lot of people there. And I think I'm happy to say that because, in fact, a few months later, I had one of the young women there come to me and say, Catherine, I've changed my career. And I was like, amazing. What are you doing? She's like, I was going to go to university to do German, but now I'm going to do German and management because I want to be a leader. I want to be a woman in business. I was like, yes, so amazing. Which is, a real achievement. But then from then, using that community and building it up even further through other projects to have further impacts. And then I realised, well, unfortunately, I don't want to be earning lots of money in corporate. I want to continue doing this. And so carried on to join organisations like Circle and Colour and Tech, which I'm sure I'm going to talk about more, to help build their communities and have a greater impact on helping underrepresented individuals accelerate their careers in more than just business, but in tech itself.
Yeah. Is that it? What is it? This is a real podcasty question. So, Catherine, can you remember back to a time? What is it when you were younger that annoyed you? Because you could just go and play football or something. Why did you choose to go that? It sounds like a fun, interesting path, but why did you choose to go that? This is really fucking me off. I've got to do something about this. What?
Purely being pissed off with it, to be quite honest. The amount of times where I'm just that, and I didn't want to hear the same names, and I wanted to have somebody there that I could relate to and that I could fully understand the challenges of. And I think a lot of the times as well, I used to go to a lot of events as part of various initiatives I was in, and a lot of the time, a lot of the panelists were unfortunately white men, and being there and seeing, okay, again, I don't relate to these people, and just switching off and not actually learning anything. And then the times where there was any representation, whether it was somebody of colour, whether it was somebody from the LGBTQ community, whether it was a woman, most often they were spoken over, or they weren't gone to in terms of that sense. Or if I did want to hear from people in the space, it would have to be a specific event that was, for women. So, for example, so often we have organisations that do events for Black History Month, and that'll be the only time that they'll have people of colour on their panels. And I'm like, that's not right. We should have people from all backgrounds on all different panels. So it was kind of looking at that and being really annoyed at the situation and thinking, no, we need to change that. And I'm a strong believer of be the change that you want to see. And I thought, well, if I don't do anything about it, then how is it going to change? So, yeah, that kind of led on to a long road, a lot of conversations, a lot of networking, and, yeah, here we are today.
Because that I think that's, like the never-ending thing of, like, representation on panels. And do you know Running Remote?
No, I don't.
They're a whole, like, remote work organisation, and someone called Rowena, who's a friend of our podcast, like, pointed out how there was this speaker poster, come and hear these great people, and they were like all men. There was one woman, and they were all men, and most of the men were white, and they were all from like all the companies, like Google, Todoist, IBM, and things like that. And the Igor, who runs Running Remote, is one of the few event organisers who got in the chat where the organisation was being caned and said, look, we didn't realise that is a bit bad, and came up with this is the percentages. And his percentages were way better than most like work-focused, future worky, techie things. But they were still like for you and me, they would be like, you could do better, and it is quite hard to do better. But what do you think it is? Is it? And you can say whatever you like. I'm sure you will anyway. Yeah. But like, is it that event organisers are just a bit dumb, or is it that's unfair? Sorry, that's been a bit unnecessarily rude. Is it that they don't notice? Or is it the companies sending those people don't notice, so they accidentally go, Cliff are the right people for this job?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think there's so many parts I think that contribute to that, because I think it's a bit of everything of what you said. I don't think event managers are stupid, but I think it's
neither are Julius.
I think it's a lack of connection.
Just to point out, we are event managers, so like
exactly. We're event managers. We have diverse panels. It's great. But I think it's a lack of connection and network. Like the amount of times I speak to individuals that are putting on events, I'm like, oh, well, we don't know anybody in this space. Like we don't know anybody who is a Black founder. We don't know anybody who is part of the LGBTQ community who's a VC investor. Or we don't know any students who are neurodivergent who want to go into this industry. And I'm like, well, you're not looking hard enough, is quite frankly the answer. You're not making network connections with organisations that are supporting these individuals, like Colour in Tech, as an example. If you want to have more diverse panels, you need to reach out of your comfort zone and go to the spaces where they are and make the connections with those individuals. And then also on a corporate level, I mean, a lot of the time I think it's, okay, well, who's the most senior person we can get who's available to do this? That is usually the case, and that's coming from, going back to my corporate days where I was there organising some of these things. And I think it's not necessarily that they don't see that maybe the only people they're putting forward are not underrepresented. I think it's the fact that the organisation as a whole do not have enough underrepresented people at high enough positions. And you mentioned earlier as well around data and stats. I think there is also an element of challenging that as well. Like, I'm a big fan of data, and I'm always there, like, show me the stats, show me the numbers, like, prove it, quite frankly. But also kind of be accountable to those stats. I mean, there's a really famous one that the government did a few years ago. That's a really great example, which was we're getting more women into leadership, and their goal was to get 50% of women into leadership positions or something along those lines. But then when you really broke down what the stats were, it was actually women in like middle management positions, like not actually in any SLT, like senior leadership team areas or any decision-making roles. I mean, this was the same time where there were more CEOs called Steve than there were female CEOs in the top 100 companies, which is ridiculous in itself. But yeah, and I think, yeah, it's more that there's not enough people at high enough positions in corporate. So then when they're sending people forward, there isn't anybody there to send.
So the one thing sounds like a real A-level, entry-level question, sorry, but why is it that there is overwhelming data that says if you have diverse teams, they're more creative, they perform better, and it's not just like one report delivered by someone super biased. It's like, you know, huge companies are actively seeking out, like, oh my god, we've got to have lots of different people on our team, and I hate saying it just makes sense, but it just makes sense. Like, you know, just it's more interesting when there's a room full of people that are not exactly the same as you. But then it's sort of, it seems in some areas, and the thing we're most interested in is you know, events, but people just get lazy. They're like, oh, it's like, you know, it's really good to take vitamins and go running, and then they're like, over here, you know, well, probably there's a better example, but why do people sort of don't make the connection, or don't continue it, don't make the same everything around? That's a clumsy question, sorry.
No, it's a good question, to be honest. I think the connection is I think it's intention a lot of the time, and having the right people there to kind of hold you accountable. I mean, I'm a big fan of focus groups. I'm a big fan of surveying and asking people, because I believe that one person can't have all the answers. You know, you've got to ask people. And I think in a lot of cases, what we need to be doing is we need to be bringing diverse people together and asking, like, okay, what do we need to do to make this space more inclusive? How do we bring you into the conversation? But then we have to take a step back there as well, because we also need to make an environment that is safe and that people feel that they belong in it, so they feel comfortable answering that. And that's something that I think a lot of community managers, especially in co-working spaces, need to be working on. Because if you want, I mean, it's also financial, right? But if you want more diverse talent coming in and working in your spaces, you need to make them feel comfortable there, right? Like a really good example, and I think this is from a kind of event management point of view, is if you're looking at spaces, it's making sure that there are things there that people identify with. So, for example, we had our Black Tech Fest launch event a couple of months ago, and what we did is we brought in loads of hair products to put into the bathroom that specifically maybe people with...
I'd feel really left out of that one.
Yeah, well, sorry. But no, we would put loads of hair products and like hair combs, etc., specific to black hair in the bathrooms. So then when people went in to use the toilet, say if they wanted to freshen up, that product and stuff was there for them. It's little things like that, and then they felt more included, and they actually stayed longer, they promoted a lot of the event, and, you know, now they're coming to the big party in a week and a half's time.
Gee, what's that? What's Black Tech Fest?
Well, Black Tech Fest. Who doesn't
Second
know Black
only
Tech
to our London co-workers.
Oh, of course. No, Black Tech Fest is our yearly celebration of Black Tech talent within the tech industry, and we have 3 days of the festival. First day online, 10th of October, and then the 11th is purely for futures, so for our early talent community, and then our advanced community is the final day on the 12th, where we actually have the Craig David coming to speak, which I'm not going to say any more on because I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
That was just for anyone that wasn't around at the end of the 90s in England. Like, Craig David's from my hometown, and he is like the bomb. Like, can I get a rewind?
I can't tell you how many people have asked, but it's going to be amazing. And guess what? It's all free.
Yeah.
Because we believe in social mobility, and they're not being any barriers to being able to come along.
So sorry to sound like a Daily Express reader. Like, why do we need a Black Tech Fest? Just to spell it out for people.
So, well, we need it because of exactly the reasons I mentioned earlier, right? We need to showcase...
I was listening. I'm just like...
Yeah, no, of course. But it's like, it's showcasing diverse talent and the contributions we're making to basically say, this is what we're doing and this is why it's important, and to encourage more of the younger generation or people that are just starting to get into tech, that there is a space there for them, and that there is a space to grow and there's a space to be, and there's so much potential for them. So it's kind of that empowering and that encouraging feeling that we want to try and bring. So
I've heard, like, and you know, we both know Sangeeta from the Masala podcast. It's based in Town Square. So I knew this was important. I thought I knew about it, and then just as we've spoken a lot about why she does her podcast, which we'll link to in the show notes, is when you don't see yourself. Can you say this? Because like, why is representation at events really, really important? Because you alluded to it earlier.
Yeah, so it's important because when you see someone there who you look and identify with, it's so much more empowering. Because if you see someone who feels and looks like you, You're there like, I can be this person, like this space is for me, this industry is for me, and I can be here. And that it's safe for me to be here, which is so much more important, because if we're looking for the future, well, we want more diversity. I mean, again, you mentioned earlier, there's so many statistics to why it's better for business, it's better even for co-working spaces to have more diverse talent in one space, because of that diversity of thought that comes forward, new ideas that come forward. So to be able to get to that root there of inspiring people at that early level to get involved, that leads to all the benefits that come later on down the line.
And when on that point there, when people, this used to happen to me actually. I'd walk into a co-working space, really cool co-working space around Old Street, 10 years ago, when when it was all free, and I would walk in, and I'm like a confident white guy, and I had the right hoodie. And I go in and think, oh my God, these people are all like, start-up bunnies. And they're all harmless and doing their thing. No one was like ever rude to me. But I just didn't feel I fitted in, because they were all like, doing their start-up thing. And I was a blogger, I was just a blogger. I wasn't, pumped up on craft beer and everything. And I felt intimidated. And then talking to so many people not like me over the years are like, I wouldn't fit in there. But they're really welcoming. But I just don't feel. And one of the most consistent themes in nearly every episode of this podcast is that people say some form of, we wanted to create a safe space, or I needed to go to a safe space, or I need a safe space. Because when you sit down, you feel safe, and all your creative juices flow, and you're not overthinking, am I looking okay? Is someone going to, no one beats you up in a co-working space, but you feel weirdly threatened when you don't fit in.
It comes from, I think, I'm trying to think of a way to put it, but it comes from all the things around in that space that are there, that are unconscious, that kind of tell you that this space is for me. And I think one of the really common examples I give is like making sure that there's, for example, the LGBTQ community, like making sure there's like non-gendered toilets. Like the fact of having gendered toilets there can be really triggering for someone in the background, because if you're non-binary, you then have to go, well, which one do I go for? Like, this space isn't for me. And then that's creating an uncomfortable feeling that you get just from walking in and seeing it. That doesn't even come from meeting anybody yet. And then also having like prayer space for people from religious backgrounds, particularly Muslims, that need like particular prayer times throughout the days, and a safe space to do that.
I'm not a cupboard in the corridor.
Oh yeah, the cupboard in the corner. Every time that comes up, I'm just like, no. But yeah, and just having spaces like that are there, that show that there have been thought put into there, that you are the forefront of people's minds, that it is safe because these considerations have been put in for you, and you haven't had to ask for it, which is such an important part.
I interrupted there because I was so excited. Pardon me. So there's a community we know in London. It's like a pop-up co-working meetup, and there are 1,500 Muslims in it, and they're like, not all of them, but they're like, basically it's like a, when I say young, like under 30, Muslim people of Muslim faith who are all like techie startup, creative economy people, and they go and work in other spaces, but they just find it much safer. It's not that they need to work in a place on their own, but when they go to a space that's incredibly understanding of how that functions. And I was listening to St. Gita's podcast today. This is a tangent I hope works out because it's just popped in my mind. And there was a whole thing about childcare and workspaces and everything like this. And she said, you wouldn't work for a company that didn't have a health plan, but you think it's okay to work for a company that doesn't have some kind of, childcare thing built into it. And we just assume that women will come to work, do their job and go home and do their care work, that we default to women, not like my household, I don't know, but after a year. But we just, in lockdown, I was blown away by how men carried on working and women carried on working, and then picked up all the slack that happened because
all of homeschooling,
Yeah, and that happened in our house because I'm just like crap at homeschooling, but I do a lot of cleaning and other stuff like that. So there it was the best person for the job. But I was just amazed at where that erupted. Where should we go from here? You didn't say I didn't ask you, and you didn't say what is Colour in Tech, because it is like so cool.
Yeah, so Colour in Tech, I mean, it's an amazing organisation. That's the reason why I joined, right? But what we do is our aim is to make the tech industry more equitable and inclusive. And the way we do this is we support our young people with our Next Gen programme to kind of help them get jobs in tech, but also to help them stay in tech by helping them with career readiness programs, helping them with their CVs, helping them nail interview skills. So we help them with all of that. And then we have our advanced program that helps professionals with 3+ years experience doing pretty much the same thing, but on a more kind of professional, higher level kind of curriculum. So looking more at leadership, looking more at career change, like skills development as well. And then we also have our startup pathway as well called Rise, which specifically looks at, well, how do we get startups investment ready? How do we help them with leadership? How do we help them with tech as well? And all of our programs are specifically for underrepresented communities as well, to help build their networks, help build their skill sets. And then we also have Black Tech Fest as well, which is what I mentioned earlier.
And you have the fucking newsletter on the face of the planet.
Oh, absolutely. It even makes me laugh every week.
Because you have huge people sponsoring you.
Yeah. We have, for example, Google, Meta. We have PlayStation as well. We've got Blizzard and King coming this year. Yeah, loads of organisations.
So there's like deep connection, and what I really respect about the organisation, because I know sponsors sometimes, but like if there's no pandering to sponsors, like this happened in this company and this is not acceptable, and it was so. Quite a lot of D&I stuff is so middle of the road and apologising for causing a disruption, and this was like, this is shit, And I'd like you to bring your attention to how rubbish and unacceptable this is, and that I started reading that like 3 years ago, and I really, that's what first drew me to it and got me so up on it, because it's so unapologetic. What was the thing? So someone comes, or someone like me comes to me and says, "Oh, gee, Catherine, what a great tips for building community and why." I mean, I think we covered like why diversity is important in community, and I think the listener is an informed person. But how do you go about connecting in the context of, say, Town Square and co-working spaces, and then organisations like yours? Because there's a lot of groups I know that don't have a base, but they have they have a big community that's either online or meets up in a pop-up thing. How do you get people to connect? Because that's a bit of a superpower. I sort of do it without thinking, but I never know how to tell people how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, but it's one that can be done, believe it or not. So I think it comes down to 4 aspects. So it's listen, it's action, it's collaboration, and it's connection.
That was really prepared.
Thank you.
I can do something like that.
It's almost like I think about this. Yeah. But yeah, so I think firstly that key bit of listening, right? So it's what we said earlier of like getting a variety of different voices and being like, okay, well, how can I best help you? How can I make this space safe for you? Like, what is something that you need on a daily basis? Like you mentioned earlier, like childcare. Or if you want to have more of the Black community in your co-working space, like, okay, well, can I get products in the bathroom that will help, if they want to do a touch-up or help with hair and stuff like that? Or do we make sure that we have panel events where we don't, that aren't just Black History Month, that's the only time we're going to have Black people on it. So listening to people and finding out what they truly want and what they truly need, and having that there ready for them. So that when they come, they feel a sense of inclusion while they're there, and they're more likely to refer to other people within the community going, hey, I actually work from this co-working space and it's really cool, and I want you to come along. It brings them in. The second point is action. Kind of goes in with listen. So once you've heard what they need to do, actually put your money where your mouth is, right? I think one of the worst things in our industry is performative allyship. And I think actually it causes more damage.
What is Obviously, I know what performative allyship is. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah, no, of course, Benny, of course. So performative allyship is, for example, showcasing and saying, yes, we're doing so much for DEI, but not actually doing anything. Yeah. So it's very much like greenwashing, which most people know, in terms of like people saying, oh yeah, no, we're doing all this stuff on sustainability, but they're actually not doing anything.
Flying in corporate jets with setting fire to things.
Right, exactly. So it's exactly the same. like a really good example actually was back in when George Floyd was murdered, and every single company under the sun put a black square on Instagram, right? And that gives the view that, okay, well, things are changing, things are going to get better because everybody's behind it. Would you believe me if I said that investment to black-owned businesses decreased between when that happened to now, since before that?
I did not know. I knew it was like alarmingly, like not even just like it's like 3% or something. Isn't it?
Oh, it's under 0.5%, Bernie.
Oh my god, it's even worse than I thought.
It's bad.
And say that out loud because I like reinforcing that stat. So
yeah, it's, I mean, remembering off the top of my head, it's less than 0.5% of investment funding has gone to black-owned businesses, and then even less than that, it's like 0.02% to female black-owned businesses, which is ridiculous.
And in that 0.02%, like at least some of those people are from Urban MBA.
Yeah,
they're like, it's cool. That is. I know it's really bad, and I sort of look it up every now and then, but I didn't realise it was that low.
It's that low, and that's what I mean by performative allyship can be really dangerous because you're thinking things are getting better, but it's not.
I really like what Patagonia did around George Floyd's murder because they were like, they're sort of like holier. People think they're holier and home, and they came out and were like, I think they were just even really. They didn't even say. I automatically said, I don't know how we did this. They said we have not paid enough attention to the diversity of our teams and stuff, and we're going to go and do something about it. And I actually haven't checked, but the way they came out with like, oh, we are a bit shit at this, so we better sort it out. And I appreciate that kind of boldness and honesty rather than performative allyship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's okay to get things wrong. A lot of people think, oh, no, we've got to get right all the time. No, it's okay to get things wrong and to accept that you've got something wrong, but it's your responsibility to learn and do better. And that's where that action piece comes in. It's there like, okay, now we know we're not doing the right thing. What are we now going to do better? And that's where the next point comes in, which is collaboration. I'm never expecting one person to know all the answers, but that's where you find the organisations that can support you with that. So whether that's enlisting a DEI expert, getting them to come in and like help you create more inclusion within your organisation or within your co-working space, or whether it's collaborating with organisations like Colour and Tech and saying, okay, well, how can I get access to, say, startups that are from diverse backgrounds so I can encourage them to use our spaces and like get involved in some of the events that they're doing. So it's collaborating with different organisations that kind of can help support with that mission, so then you get more involved with it. And then we come down to our last point, which is connection. So that's building the relationships with people. And that's like what we've done today. I mean, we started off with a conversation from an introduction, 6-7 months ago?
Yeah.
And we stayed in touch and we built our relationship together. And now we're sitting here on this podcast, which is amazing. And that we're able to collaborate.
Are you having an amazing time?
I am. I told you, this was the highlight of my week. I've been there telling my colleagues that.
Doing a podcast further than that, because I've been like trying to find a way to get, I'm trying to work out what to do with Colour and Tech. There wasn't just like, oh, we really, of course I care, but like now we worked out that, we can help Colour and Tech people find the safe space in co-working and help co-working people find out more about how to support. Because everyone runs around going, I'd like to do something.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got a very long way with. The reason we have this building is because people in the London Co-working Assembly have helped find this building and put it all together and technology within and doing all the tech. So it's like how long is it since 2019? 5 years?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it has been 5 years.
So Urban MBA, me and Kofi met for an Urban MBA event in 2019 it was like a London Co-working Assembly and Urban MBA event at Main Yard in Hackney. And 5 years later, we are actually still in Hackney here. They've got a whole 2-floor building, and the same. The same sort of thing with Colour and Tech. I interrupted you again. Sorry to like man over you.
No, go for it. Go for it. It's part of the conversation.
Where were you?
Yes, we're on connection.
Yep.
On that point, and I think as well part of it is increasing your network. I think there was some advice I got a few years ago from someone when I was in this space, And it was like, you can really kind of understand like your point of view in terms of diversity and how many people are in your space by looking at your LinkedIn connections. Like, how many people in your connections are from the same background as you, whether that's socioeconomic background, whether that's racial background, whether that's sexuality or anything else. Is everybody in your network look like you? Because if that is, then that's not good enough, quite frankly. And you need to go meet some people and be involved in spaces where you're meeting diverse thought, where you're meeting different people and gaining different experiences from one another. So getting involved in those networking opportunities, networking spaces, and speaking at different areas, and inviting different people to the table to speak as well.
Elena Giroli from Creative Works. We've been working together on stuff since like 2013, I think it is. She was one of the first people to point that out to me. When I did this event, which was like 4 white guys from big tech companies, and I was so pleased with myself. I got all these like heavy hitters. Yeah. And she was like, "Do only white men, work in the sharing economy and tech?" And I was like, I had not noticed. And the other thing is Tash Thomas, who's a D&I specialist, and she said, she said the similar kind of thing. So she made me look down my Audible thing, and the books I listen to the most are, this is funny, it's not funny, but they're all like bald men, bald white men. Stephen Covey, Seth Godin, Moby, Claire Shirky, there's another guy in there as well. And I was like, how on earth did I do that? Like, I didn't know I'd do that, And there's this thing in co-working called founder bias, because very often the people in a co-working space, if it's like a middle-aged single mum who runs it, there'll be middle-aged single women in the space and all that kind of thing. So I think we have to think, like I just discovered it, paying a lot of attention to being self-aware is like exhausting but very important.
It is very important, and I mean, we all have an unconscious bias. Every single person.
I thought it was just me.
No, it's not just you, don't worry. I even have an unconscious bias. I'm still figuring out what it is, but we all do. And it's understanding that and then challenging yourself with it and saying, okay, well, how do I go beyond that? How do I improve everything around me to challenge that unconscious bias that is there?
Cool. Last thing. I should have told you this earlier. So why, think of the world, rather than like our organisations, like in the economic post-COVID shitstorm we're in, why is community the key for you?
Oh, because community is everything, Bernie. Community is where we feel belonging. Community is where we network. Community is where we hear different perspectives and that we can broaden our view. It's where we bring different people to the table. It's where, as humans, we bond on connection with one another, right? We are not solo creatures, we are part of a unit. And so having community is a way to bring that unit together. It's to bring people to move forward. And in addition to that, a community is a way to get people following the same goal and pushing for the same things as well. So when you're looking at DEI, where you're looking at trying to create a more inclusive space, by having a community that's behind that and pushing that, you've got more power to say and challenge people who aren't doing that. That's why community is important.
And where can we find you online, Catherine?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So if you go onto LinkedIn, it's the / when you do it, and it's Catherine Nina Park.
We can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, feel free to connect with me. Feel free to drop me a message. If you agree with what I've said. If you don't agree as well, please.
It's much more fun when people who don't agree with
you. Yeah, pretty much. I don't agree with me, and then come along and challenge me. Like, that's what I want, right?
Nice. And then Colouring Tech is colouringtech.io?
No, .org.
.org, okay.
So I'll give you the link so you can follow that. And of course, I'll give you the tickets for Black Tech Fest. It's all free.
All of those links in the show notes. I really appreciate this. I really like it's just been epic building this relationship with you and Colouring Tech over the last few years. So high five. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention today. And I should ask this every episode. We're 160 episodes in, and I always forget to say, go to your favourite podcast subscriber and leave a review, because it helps the show more than you know. Have a nice day. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.